Hello everyone. Today we are going to see the topic Oracle Dynamic SQL. Actually, it's its most important topic. Why? Because if you see normal SQL, the static SQL, it's built completely in the compile time. But the dynamic SQL, it's built in the runtime. Okay. So it's a best way to improve the performance if you are changing only specific variable or specific column or specific table, then we can go with dynamic SQL and we can improve the performance. Okay, so let's see one by one how it works. Okay, what is dynamic SQL? Dynamic SQL means constructing and executing SQL statement at runtime instead of fixing the complete SQL statement when the PLSQL program is compiled. So when we so actually if we know how in the structure in the future, then what we can do, we can use dynamic SQL to run our query as fast as possible because our parsing will increase. Okay, for um, if we are changing only few parameter values at a runtime, then we can use dynamic SQL to stay our query more time in the buffer. Okay, that's why dynamic SQL will be used. Okay, so the static SQL, see here if you see the employee ID, if you are hard coding, always we can use only this 101 employee ID. If you want to change this employee ID for each run, so it will be creating new um, cache query to run it. Okay, instead of doing that, the query will be same if you use dynamic SQL, because what happened here, we will use the query and we use the bind variable. So in the PLSQL, we use execute immediate to run the dynamic SQL. So the query, the compile time, it will be like this. Run time, what happen? It will execute this SQL, this complete string, and it will load it to this variable. Okay, the variable using class, the whatever the bind variable we want to pass as an input. That's the way it will be constructed. Okay, why do we need dynamic SQL? So in your query runtime, only table name changing. Example, we have 10 different models. For each model, we have one table name. Okay. So from the front end, the reporting people, they are selecting each model. The based on the model, they want to display the report. Okay. Only table name, we have different table name. Most of the columns are same. Okay. Only few columns difference. So that time what you can do, you can build the dynamic SQL. Only the table name runtime you can change it, and the column name whatever the extra you can change it in the runtime. Okay, that's the way we can improve the performance of the query. Okay, only table name change in the runtime, or column name, or where condition, or you want to run some DDL and DML in the runtime, and dynamic PSQL. So any one of this, it's changing in the runtime, then you can go with dynamic SQL and you can build the efficient PLSQL block. Okay. So general utilities and metadata driven application. Okay. So when you see one common pattern, only particular query table name is changing, where condition is changing, or column name is changing. So that time you can use this dynamic SQL. Okay. So static SQL versus dynamic SQL. So a static is SQL structure is known when the PLSQL program is written or compiled. The structure it's known compile time itself, but dynamic SQL it's built in the runtime based on the user input. It's built in the runtime. Okay. So execute immediate, the main PLSQL statement used for most native dynamic SQL operation. Okay, this is the statement used for the PLSQL. Okay, to run the dynamic SQL. Okay, this is the syntax: execute immediate, whatever the SQL statement we built, that one into that variable, which variable you want to store it, then using bind variable. This is the input values. Okay. And returning class. If you want to return, you want to return, you can using returning into class, you can returning the values, variables. Okay, values. So this is a sample program. So this is I declared variables and within the single quotes. Okay, it's first it behaves as a string. So here whatever the string we want to do it, so put it in the single quotes. So the bind variable, if you put it as a colon 1, this is the first variable in the using class. Okay, if it's column 2, second variable. Okay, so while doing the execute immediate, we are going to run this SQL statement and moving once it executes the result set, we are moving to these two variables using the input parameter 101. This 101 will be passed here. Okay, that then runtime it will execute and it result will be moved to here and we can print it in the output. Okay, so a similar way, dynamic insert, how it work. So runtime, we are passing this all four input. So user is passing these four input. Okay, directly what we can do, this values first colon 1, this value will be passed, colon 2, the second value, colon 3, fourth value, this for this fourth value. Okay, so one more time, if you want this 105, can we use it colon 1? No. So if you can use it colon 105 colon 5 and 105, again you can call it. Okay, that's the way. If you want the same value again, you have to declare it and you have to pass it from here. Okay, that's the way it will work. So it's an insert update. So mostly you have to properly concatenate with the string, then you can call it using SQL immediate and you have to use the proper using class. And if you want to return, then you can use a return class. Okay, update also same. So here this one. Okay, so table also we can create runtime. See, we can take the input from the user, whatever the column name required, those column name you can execute immediately. You can see nowadays some tools, if you see, if you pass the input of all the column names and table names, runtime automatically this will be built. Okay, so dynamic SQL is it will be possible create the table at the runtime. Okay, based on the input. Okay, so this is the one sample. Only I want to see the count of the table. We have hundreds of table, but the user want to see the count of any specific table. This one we can make as an input. Based on the input, it will be passed the column name, table name. Then it will fetch the count and put into this one, and it will be output. Okay, that's the way you can dynamically get the multiple values output. Okay, this is a column name, dynamic column name. So here, if you want to put any specific column, the input, you can runtime, we can put the input and we can find the max value, min value, anything. Okay. SQL injection. Actually, normally in the dynamic SQL, we don't directly concatenate the user input to SQL. What we do, we will using bind variable, we will assign. This is the bind variable, right? So first we will uh, assign to the declare it in the bind variable. Then using that we can pass using class. We can pass. That's a way the user can't inject any bad SQLs. Okay, so security concern will be there. So that's why first we will put it into our using class and using bind variable we will access it. Okay, so DBMS asset also it's also helping to give more security before concatenating into main SQL. We can check this given object is valid or not. Then we can pass it to SQL. Okay, dynamic SQL. So complete block also we can run it using dynamic SQL. Okay, we create the block and we can run it. Okay, returning into. So instead of updating After that, if you want to return immediately that value using returning clause, we can return it. Okay. So DBMS SQL, if we are working on any Oracle product, okay, then you use DBMS SQL. If you are not working on any Oracle product, then it's less possible to work on this. Okay, so this is the flow for DBMS SQL. So here, very complex logic will be uh, built using the dynamic SQL. Then we go for this DBMS underscore SQL package. Mostly in Oracle products, we use this one. Okay, so it's these are the operations we have in the DBMS SQL package. Okay, so the difference between execute immediate and DBMS SQL, the features. So execute immediate, it's very UC, it's more complex. DBMS SQL, simple dynamic is excellent, but it's possible. Okay, dynamic DDL and DML, yes, it's possible in both. Dynamic select is possible in both. So dynamic number of columns. Okay, if you want to fetch the columns in the dynamic, it's have some limit. It's not having the limit. Okay, so describe columns. It's not possible here, but it's possible here. Fine grained control. It's less. It's more. Okay, so real time. Like if you want to say mostly, if you want to check some table name count for multiple table using single query, you can use dynamic SQL and you can give to the front end people, call with the table name, you will get the count of it. Okay. Okay. So let's go with demo. Okay. So I created the table already. Now just this is the first program. Okay. If you see here, so just I declared the one SQL statement. So here just concatenating the complete string. Then I am using execute immediate. This will be executed and the values will be loaded here. Using the input will be passed to here and it's stored here. Then it will be printed here. Okay. So Raja and 80K. Okay. So that's the way dynamic SQL work. So if you have proper understanding of execute immediate, how to build the structure based on the business need, so put it into variable, using class pass the binaries. Okay. So remaining all same. If you insert, see if you all see here. See, only 4 record we have. Okay. Now let me run it this. So and it's completed. Now we see 5 records. 5 records. It's 5th record also insert. Suresh 105 also insert. So that's the way. Now this query will be same, right, for all the insert. Okay. So that's the way it stay in the buffer more time. So it will give the better performance. Okay. Runtime, this value will be passed. Or else you have to change it to every time, right? So that's the way you can improve the performance. This will become as an input in the real time. Okay. Same thing it's possible on this one. So okay. So DDL. So if you want to create table, so you can use this one dynamic. So, so now we can see this table. So runtime, you can take the input and you can create the tables. Okay. Okay. Table is created, no data. So if you want to check the count in dynamically, so this input, based on the input, it will see the count. And runtime, we can pass the different table. See now, if you see here, so table count. Instead of this, I want to see the employee table. So 14 record. So that's the way based on the input it will be getting. Okay. Okay. This is the returning class. So after update, if you want to return it using the returning class, you can return it. So this updated salary after this one 81K. Okay, earlier. So see immediate of instead of see while you drawing your balance or you once your deposit it's done, it's update to the account and you will get the message also, right? That's the way it will work, returning. So this is the flow for DMS SQL real time. So we will create some package and we will call this Dynamic SQL block. So runtime user will call with the input table, then immediately they will get the count of the particular table. Okay. So this is the block. So create dynamics. So user, so runtime, this is the one table procedure I created. Target. PSK table name. Why? Okay. It should work. Okay. So if we maybe some so actually this procedure should accept one input parameter table name and runtime it should run, it should validate and it will be fetching the table count. Okay, let's go. This validation is not happening. So this we can't assign the values to input, right? That's why we can declare some other variable and we can use this. So now, so I want to get this. So we will give it to the front end people. This one in the UI, they will use this procedure and ask input from the user. Then it will run based on the input table name. It will give the count. Okay, that's the demo. Okay, so performance perspective, if you see, if it's possible, directly using static SQL. Okay, then go with static SQL. See, if you have if you don't have the scenario of having multiple tables or multiple column name, it's always fixed, then go with static SQL. But it's changing, then you can go with dynamic SQL. Okay. So use bind variable for changing values. So avoid generating unnecessary very some same SQL text. Okay. So some set of columns. If you say you have 10 tables, uh, around 7 columns. It's same name, it's repeated in all the table means you can create one variable and you can assign all these column names to this variable and you can use it. So the duplication you can avoid it. Okay. So validate dynamic objects names. Okay. So parsing will be happen. Okay. Parsing. So if you are just changing any particular where condition or table name or column name, then you can using dynamic SQL you can improve the parsing. Okay, cursor sharing will be faster. Okay, using DBMS when complex dynamic SQL requires additional control. Okay, so when you need complete control for complex dynamic SQL, then you can use DBMS SQL. Okay, these are the common errors. Okay, invalid identifier, table or view does not exist, not all variables bound, SQL command not properly entered. No data in this one. Interview point of view. Okay. So this is one. What is dynamic SQL? So SQL statement constructed and executed at the runtime instead of being fixed at the compile time. Okay, it's run in the execution time. Okay, not in the compile time. Runtime it will be executed. Static SQL with dynamic SQL. So it's having fixed SQL structure. That's static. Dynamic, it's changed in the runtime. Okay, it's, dynamics are low. Execute immediate. The PLSQL statement you can execute directly in the dynamic SQL. Okay. DBMS SQL is Oracle package that provide detailed control over parsing, binding, executing, and fetching the dynamic SQL. Okay, it's a PLSQL Oracle package. Okay, difference between execute immediate and DBMS SQL. Execute immediate is simpler, most dynamic SQL, but DBMS provide more control with the complex dynamic operations. Okay, can bind variable used for the table names? No, bind variable can be used for values, but not SQL identifiers such as table name column. So it's for this you can use the text variables. Okay. Can DDL can be executed using dynamic? Yes, DDL such create alter top can be executed using execute immediate. Okay. How do you execute dynamic SQL select and TML? Build a SQL string. First we have to build a SQL string. Then we can execute using execute immediate into using or returning class. Okay. Returning class if you require. What is SQL injection? So SQL injection is security attack where malicious input change the intent of a SQL statement and cause unauthorized operation. Okay. So so if the user is giving some manipulated string attached to the SQL, then it will be SQL injection. To avoid that, we will use bind variables. Okay. So bind variables, how to bind variables help prevent SQL. Bind variables treated as user input as data rather than SQL code. Okay, it's input, it's not SQL statement. So while passing, we use using class to pass this bind variables. Okay. So what is DBMS assert? It's Oracle package used to validate dynamically supply and help prevent the SQL injection. Okay. When should be DBMS SQL be used? Use DBMS when you need to advance control. Okay, over highly dynamic SQL such as dynamic description or fetching columns. Okay, how do you dynamic SQL column name? So concatenate the validate column name to the SQL statement directly after validating the DBMS asset. Okay, how does dynamic SQL affect the parsing? Different SQL text can be cause additional parsing. Okay, if you are changing single value, then it will be giving different cache in new query, right? So bind variable it's consistent. So SQL text help improve the cursor sharing performance. That's what I will give the one scenario. Actually, when we are having my project, we are processing millions of record um, for one procedure. Okay, so the millions of record, what we are doing, we are calling only changing the order ID. So million times the SQL text is changing. Then what we do, we create the dynamic SQL using bind variable. Just we called using this um, input as a value. Okay, bind value. So it's improve the performance huge way. Okay, so so that's way sometimes you will get the recommendation from the DBA. So the query is not staying in the buffer long time. Make it dynamic SQL. So those kind of time you can create dynamic SQL and you can handle it. Okay, so it's it depends on always your business need. Okay, so if you see in your project some tables or some column it's used multiple times, so better go with time execute. Okay, it's always depends on the project need. Okay, so interview perspective also we saw. Okay, this is end of the video. Please subscribe my channel, please share your feedback and provide your comments. What are the topics I have to cover and future videos, what are the videos I have to create it. Okay, based on your input I will be creating future videos. Thank you for supporting. Please subscribe it, give the likes, share your comment. I will be sharing more videos. Thank you.